Hi, John. Thank you so much for joining Unleashing Light today. I have John Walton here from Hartford, and he is going to be talking about his journey with cancer and maybe also a little bit of his work that he's been doing with the Hartford Public Schools to improve how they can serve children. So, John, if you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Yes, my name is John Walton, and like you said, I had a battle with stage 3 colon cancer. I'm a Hartford resident. I also work for the city of Hartford in the public school system, and I also work for the state of Connecticut, working with troubled teens, uh, helping them get their lives together or just managing the lifestyle that they have now.
Yes, and thank you so much. John, when I reached out to you and asked for you to be on here, one of the things you said was, if it's going to help somebody else, I'm happy to do it, which is such a beautiful response because that's really what I want to bring to this space. So, can you tell me a little bit about maybe what age you were diagnosed with a colon cancer and how that journey started for you?
So I was diagnosed at age 33, which is very unusual. And let me get back to when you asked me to share my story, or we talked about it. One of the biggest things that I learned being an African American male is that in the African American community, we very rarely share our health situations with the public or even our families to some degree. And that is the reason why, in some degrees, African American people die of cancer at a faster rate than other cultures.
So,
So
what
that was
made
something that
you,
I wanted to
yeah,
bring out to light.
what made you say, okay, I'm going to do something different? I'm going to share this.
Well, I had a family history of it called Lynch syndrome. So it's a hereditary thing because I lived a pretty healthy lifestyle outside of once I was an occasional smoker, but social smoker only if I had a beer or a glass of wine or something like that.
Mhm,
So outside of that, I was pretty healthy.
mhm.
But I have a family history of it, and in order for people to conquer cancer, you got to be educated on it.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, good for you for changing the direction of how things can go. So, 33 years old, how did you find out? Were you sick beforehand? Did it kind of come out of the blue?
Well, I'm gonna be very candid. I
Mhm.
was happened to be at the Bahamas, and I was on a cruise, and I had an inner cabin room. So I suggest to your audience that if they go on a cruise, please not get the inner cabin rooms because they're kind of small. But I had an inner cabin room, and as you know, if you've ever been on a
I
cruise,
have.
the inner cabin rooms bathrooms are very very small. So I used the bathroom, not to be too graphic, and
That's
I
okay.
had to step out of the bathroom in order to flush the toilet because those cruise liners, the toilets will sink you in.
Yeah.
So, so I looked back and I noticed blood in my stool. I didn't pay much attention because I was drinking and I was on a cruise and I'm a guy and I'm young and I'm like, whatever. But then
Mhm.
I shared the story with my mom, and my mom then alerted me to a family history and said, you really need to get checked out. So shouts out to my mom for being that nurturing component that made me go and get myself checked out.
Okay. And so you, I imagine, got some tests, and did they come back immediately like this is what it is, or did it take a while for them to find it?
Yes, so I took the test immediately, and I did a colonoscopy, and they found it immediately. And when you're diagnosed with cancer,
Mhm.
it's this whole process because they get a team around you of doctors and social workers and psychologists, because a lot of people take it as a death sentence, which by right, it can be.
Mhm.
And so when they told me, Dr. Levine in UConn Health Center told me, and around all of these people, and he says, "You, how do you feel?" And I said, but there's only two ways to feel: either I accept death or I accept life, and I choose to accept life.
Good for you. So, in that moment of crisis, though, how did you stay so positive in the I'm going to fight and not take the death sentence?
Well, I'm young. I have so much to live for. I have my children. I have my family. I didn't see it as an option. I
Okay.
mean, because when you really look at it, if you choose the death sentence,
Mhm.
that means depression, anxiety, and all of those things that make your life unhealthy. And unfortunately, and I looked at it from this standpoint: if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die happy, but I choose to live,
Mhm. Good for
and
you.
that's why I just stay positive about it.
Okay. And so I did, watch some videos of you talking in front of the school board and sharing a little bit of this story there. And you had said that it just helped you to become a better person, that it made you look at pieces of your life and decide to do things better. So, can you speak to maybe what was happening in life before the diagnosis? Who were you then? And then what did this transformation do for you?
Well, it's funny because when you're young, or when you consider yourself to be young,
Yeah.
your idea of life is not the same. It's more of, it's about me, it's what's going on in my life, it's what's cool, what's happening, and all that kind of stuff. So I was just living my life to basically fulfill what I thought was important for me, and that was very superficial.
Give
But
me an
then, as you,
example.
um, an example of living a very superficial, it's not really caring what happened in my community. As
Gotcha.
long as it, as long as it didn't disadvantage me, as long as it benefited me, that was pretty much, it was a me, myself, and I kind of existence. And although I had good parents who taught me to be of servitude and taught me to be humble, when you're young, you're not really thinking about those things. You're thinking about what gratifies you. And unfortunately, we have a society that only thinks about self gratification and not the bigger, larger community.
Mhm. Okay, so that changed for you. At what point in the process did you start like waking up to something bigger than just you?
Well, all through my life, like I said, my parents were good parents, so I have to give them that credit. So subconsciously, I was taking in good morals.
Mhm.
I wasn't using those consciously, but subconsciously they were there.
Yep.
When I was at the hospital, and I had 3 surgeries, a month of hospitalization, 6 months of chemo and radiation. It was me being by myself at the hospital that I begin to talk to my soul and begin to and get in tune with my spirit. And it was that elevation of the God inside of me that brought me to wanting to have a better reflection of myself outwardly. And that's where it was the turning point for my life, because I faced death and I looked it in the eyes and I refused it. So now it was time to make use of the life that I had, or the second chance that I had.
Mhm. So once all the distractions of the world, of the friends, of the
Right.
TV,
And it's just me and the soul,
Mhm. Can you speak a
and
little more to that?
well, I see the soul to me as the voice that speaks without actually speaking, the voice inside of you. So, because if everyone knows here, you can have a dream, and that dream can look so real. And who is that person? It's not you in the physical. So to me, it's you in the soul form. It's like having a conversation in your head, and you're having a full conversation, but your lips are not moving. That is the soul being to me. I'm a very spiritual person, not too religious.
Mhm.
So that is the person that I was in tune with, was the soul of John, not John the physical.
Okay. So, do you remember? Because a lot of those times we start having those conversations or that awareness when our heart starts breaking, when we get scared, when we're kind of like, this is all unknown to me. I don't know what I'm doing here. So, what was either the heartbreaking moment or the fear that was driving that?
Well, interestingly enough, my belief into the heartbreaking moments, like you said, are
Mhm.
what builds character. You
Yep.
need that. You need that heartbreaking moment, or those negative aspects, or those trials and tribulations, in order to be positive, so you can have something to reflect on, to show your evolution and growth.
Mhm.
Those moments for me when I was in the hospital was, if I was not here, how would my children view me? How would my family view me? How would my career view me? How would those who's had the experience of my company view me? How are my relationships with people? So
And
those
what were
moments,
they? What were those relationships? How did you think they were going to view you?
I mean, for me to even question myself about that, I realized that maybe I didn't take enough advantage of planting enough positive seeds in people and in my own life. You know, I to some degree, as a young man, I made a lot of terrible decisions, and I did a lot of negative things that harmed me and my community. As a young growing male, I wasn't always as enlightened as I am now. So I wanted to repair
Oh,
some
you
of
went out a little bit. Can you repeat that?
I wanted to repair some of the damage that I felt I had created in the world.
Okay. And so was that part of the work, kind of making amends with people where you had hurt them or things didn't go well? Or was it just simply changing who you were and moving forward? Or did you have to do some of that back work?
All of that. I had to do all of that, and that was the work. I had to call people that I hadn't spoke to in a long while and say, "Hey, if I've ever did something that offended you, please forgive me, as I want to forgive myself, and I want you to forgive me, and I want to be able to leave a mark in your life that was not so distasteful or negative. I want to create a better footing than previously before." So I had to reach out to people. I had to family members, associates, friends. I had to show people. I mean, I was a cool kid growing up because I was athletic,
I
and I
remember.
okay. So I mean, I I didn't piss off everybody, and
Yeah.
I didn't, you know what I mean? I had a lot of associates and friends, but I had to repair some things. I had to repair some things when it came to my children and the relationships I had with their mom. You know, I made some negative decisions, and I made and just things that weren't positive, and I needed to repair that, not only for my well-being, but for their well-being as well.
Yeah, and John, I mean, you speak so lightly about, that process, but those are really hard conversations to have. Like when we're owning our mistakes and our faults and our shame, and then we have enough vulnerability to then admit it to somebody else, not just ourselves, but to admit it to somebody else and then apologize for it. That's not easy. So how did you, I guess, get brave enough or courageous enough to have those conversations? Like, what
Well, when
made you
you're
just go, oh, they'll forget, like, I'm just gonna move on? Like, what made you really stand up and do that?
when you're facing death, I
Mhm.
mean, nothing else comes worse than that, right? You know, whatever you've done and you get a second opportunity, nothing's worse than facing the doors of death. Nothing's worse than that. There's no experience in my life that I think is worse than that. So it didn't take much bravery, because I did the brave part to try to survive and live. Now this was just to do what was right,
Right. In
and
comparison.
right, and repair things and it's our obligation as human beings to make the world better. If you're not about that, then you're not about being a human being. I don't care what race you are. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? It's your obligation to make the world better. If that We are all a part of something in my African culture called Ubuntu, which is all the branches are connected to the one tree. And if we don't do our part to make the world better, then what are you here for? I
Yeah.
mean, are
And
you
where
here
are
to
you
just drive?
going?
Right. And where are you going? Are you here to just drive a nice car or have a nice house, or have nice things? That's all great. And I'm not knocking anyone who has those things and are doing those things in life to get those things. But if it's not connected to a larger purpose that includes making the world better, then that's going to be a very empty existence,
Mhm.
in my opinion.
What was the hardest conversation you had to have? And if you don't want to share who that was with, that was okay, but just the parameters, or you can as well. But what was the probably the hardest conversation of all those that you really had to have with others?
Wow. I mean, there was a few.
Hmm.
So I don't know which one you exactly want, but there were a few. One would be my children's mother,
Hmm.
because I had to explain why our paths went in separate ways. But I would say one of the hardest ones was having a conversation with my mom, and really letting her know that I had a real experience with the God version of myself. in my belief system, feel that God is present within all of us. He's not, I don't feel he's disconnected from us, and we just have to manifest that through our life. And she comes from a religious background that may think a little differently.
Mhm.
And that was a hard conversation because what I told her, my experience of the God version of myself was totally different than the God version of what she has believed all her life.
Mhm. And so I hear you saying it was hard, but what was most tricky about that? Because the beliefs were different, or because she wasn't maybe going to accept your version? What was so hard about that?
Well, as my mom, she would love me either way. But the tricky part was that, her belief, she's 74 now.
Mhm.
And the tricky part was having that conversation. So that was when she was about 60, uh, 63. That conversation is a little difficult because for 63 years, she believed the version of what she believed God to be, and that was set in stone. And that's fine. Whatever makes a person the best version of themselves, I'm in total agreement with. But I had to explain to her that I was traveling a different path.
Okay. All right. And so what do you want your mom and your kids to really know now?
Well, they know everything now. I'm very transparent. so,
But if
you
you
know,
could, leave them a message, right? Of just anything that would be important for them to know, what would that be?
that life is very hard, and we have to take the good with the bad, and it's the negative and positive exchanges of life that build the character that we need to grow into the person and purpose that we're going to have in this life. And it wasn't easy, and I made plenty of mistakes, and I would leave with my mom and my children that thank you for bearing with me and walking with me through this journey. And I, although I've made you sad and upset in many ways, in many ways, I am trying to repair and do the best I can to plant seeds that I hope they water.
Yeah. But gratitude for them just being in your life.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. What was the hardest lesson that you had to learn in this process,
That
or that
life
you're
wasn't
still
about
learning?
that life wasn't about me,
Mhm.
and that a selfish existence wasn't a purposeful existence. That was a hard lesson to learn because we live in a society that is a me, myself, and I society, and who's doing the best and who has the most, and we are all trying to fulfill something that everyone else thinks is great, and to really come to the realization that life has nothing to do with that, not a purposeful life, not a happy life.
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with that. And just to be comfortable in your own skin and who you are as a person and where your journey has brought you.
Mhm.
You know, uh, there were years that I would never admit that I worked for the Harvard Public School System or what I did or any of those things, because I would just try to show people what I could afford or what I could do and how I could live my life superficially. So I didn't even admit to those things. And now I'm just comfortable being in my own skin and who I am, because I realize my purpose is larger than just what I do.
Wow, John, that's so interesting. I'm glad that you shared that, because I think many people would think, working for the public schools is a really admirable job to do, and that you're putting yourself in a community where obviously children need you. So that's really surprising to me to hear you say that you would poo poo this beautiful work that you're doing to really show, like, hey, look what I've got, when
Mhm.
it is so important what you were doing all along. So what is the purpose now that you can say, I work for the Hartford Public Schools and I work for DDS? Like, what is your purpose now in the schools and in the community?
Well, see, the reason why I answered it that way, which it was truthfully,
Mhm.
is I didn't have a purpose then. I wasn't in tune with my purpose. So because I wasn't in tune with my purpose, I was living to fill other people's purpose. Like John, the cool kid, has been successful and drives a nice car and he travels all over the world and he has nice things. So I was fulfilling other people's purposes. And now that I had this life traumatic experience and
Mhm.
got in tune with who I am as an inner soul, then I begin to fulfill what my real purpose is. And then I begin to realize what I do is actually cool. I'm
Right.
actually a part of my purpose
Yeah.
and it's not so bad.
Yeah. It's even whether it's the public schools or it's, working for a fast food restaurant, it's not really the role that we have, it's the
Right,
role we play in the position, right? So,
right.
what is your hope for what you can give and offer the kids or the community at this point? I heard you say something along the lines, and you can correct my wording if I get it wrong, but that you're looking for them to kind of rise up and do better for the community and for the students. So tell me a little bit about that and your work with that.
So as president of the union for the largest school district in the state of Connecticut, what
Hmm.
I'm trying to do is help the community rebuild itself. We've lost in the 1960s. Industrial education was taken out of our schools. And if you notice, if you're an American, everything is made in China or made somewhere else. We've lost that ability to build our communities. It's nice that we have liberal arts, and I'm all for education at the highest level,
Hmm.
but we've got to start, and the role I'm in is able to bring back some of the industrial education that we need to rebuild our communities, because we need to have our children involved in the process of building a community. And if they want to pursue higher education, the process of building a community will be able to give them the income they need to further their education without taking out mass student loans that put them in further debt. So that's my goal, is to make Hartford school system an industrial educational component so that young urban teens have options outside of being drug dealers.
Right, huge, right? And so what are the biggest challenges you see the school facing at this point?
Everything has a political component.
Mm.
So a lot of the challenges are, and are the biases that we share as different people. You know what I mean? A lot of us don't realize that we are all connected to making the world a better place. A lot of us don't have these tough conversations about race and about religion and about all the things that have separated us for so many years. Remember, people have killed over smaller issues, and especially these larger issues.
Mhm.
And we don't have these conversations. We don't sit down and talk to each other and learn each other. And one of my experiences with moving to Windsor, as I talked about in the podcast I did uh, last week, was that one of my experiences moving to Windsor High was the fact that I got to learn different engagements from different cultures,
Mm.
and learning, and people engage me differently. When I left Hartford, I only knew two cultures basically. That was African American and Latino to a degree. And when I came to Windsor, I started picking up on French and Jewish and Italian and things of that nature, and realizing the world is bigger and we all play a vast role in how to make this world better, because we have to live together,
Yeah,
and then we should live together in harmony.
absolutely. And so are you seeing any movement in the school community to start educating on more cultures, on more what we can do to help this racial issue and discrimination? And are you seeing those conversations happen, or is it kind of just more of the same?
Well, yes, I am actually seeing it happen. One of the things that I think we're learning as a society is you may kill the body of a person, like in King and Malcolm X and some of the civil rights activists of the past, and not just them, but I'm using them because they're tangible to my African American culture. But you don't kill ideas. So, like me, that idea is spawned, and I'm pushing forward that idea in the platforms that I have. So, I'm asking, let's have these conversations. Let's talk. Let's get to know each other, and being a part of this community with the experience I had with going to Windsor and learning other communities. People listen, and being the president of a union and having wearing so many different hats. People are beginning to listen because our society is changing. Our youngsters, and God bless them, shout out to the young people coming out now, are not so in allegiance with the ways of the past. They have in their hands the ability to connect to information a lot quicker and learn things that when I was growing up, you couldn't learn about. For example, you were given the Bible and everything in that Bible was God's word, and you had to believe it or you were blasphemy if you did. Now our children can pick up the knowledge they have in their hands and research it for themselves and find out what they want to believe in and what they feel is true and what they feel is not. And I think we're beginning it to move in a new direction. I know it's scary, and I know that it's going to take some time for all of us to get there, but I think we're going to move in that direction.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, you got to be, right. Otherwise, we kind of just lay down and die, right? You got to have the
Right.
hope. So, for the people that are watching, what support are you looking for? If there's people around Hartford or in the Connecticut community that want to help and want to support you, how can they do that?
I'm glad you asked that question because we all play a role in it. So
Mhm.
for the people who are watching that are outside of this community, I want you to realize something. I was a young African-American teen who was able to get an experience of moving to Windsor and into the affluent neighborhoods and getting a different experience about what life is. A lot of these teens don't get that. So I want people of those communities to understand that if we don't invest, let's say for Connecticut, for example, it is $33,000 a year to incarcerate young males, no matter who they are. And it is $13,000 a year to educate them. If we don't invest in their education, these will be the individuals who will bring harm to even your children, who will steal your car, who will maybe rape a person or murder. So if we don't invest in different options for them so that they can learn to become better and productive, we will all be affected by what they bring negatively. So don't feel like you're not a part of this community, even if you're outside of it. And for those of us that are in this community, we have to take a larger role in self-accountability and responsibility in the saying that we want those options and we want those helps and we want to be diverse and move forward and we want to live cohesively with everyone. It's about the world becoming a better place, not just us individually.
Yeah. And what do you
And so I
say?
think,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
What do you say to the people that are watching and go, oh, come on, man, like we've been fighting for so long, this isn't going to get better. They're really feeling stuck on I've been in this for so long, what is like one more me coming by and help it, like really, what is that going to do? What do you say to them?
Well, I say to them, find your purpose. I mean, don't give up on your purpose and don't give up on making the world better as we try, you and I try to have these conversations that make the world better. There are other people who are trying to make it worse. Remember, we live in a society that glorifies negativity because it's profitable. We live in a society that has some negative components because there are components of this society that makes the billions and millions of dollars on that ignorance. So the same as we're trying to make the world better, there are individuals and entities and systems that are trying to make it worse. So we've got to work just as hard as them. So don't stop. I mean, your life has to mean something. So make it mean for the good if that's what you want.
Okay. So
If
how do
you
they
want to
reach
see
you?
how do they reach me?
Yeah, how do they get in touch with you if they're like, okay, I'm ready, I want to help, sign me up, give me something to do? How do they get in touch with you?
Well, I have my email, my personal email, which is connected to my business email, which is john1978.aw.jw@gmail.com, where they can reach me and we can begin to conversate on what I think they would be capable of helping us with, because of the different components that are in the jobs that I do and as union president. So they can reach out and not only that, just speak to your children, start having a conversation with your family and realize that all of us are family. All of us, whether you're from the Caucasus Mountains of Europe, whether you're from the motherland of Africa, whether you're from the tropics of the Caribbean, whether you're from Asia, we are all connected we're all going to breathe this air. We are all going to share this planet. We are all going to drink its water. We are all going to look at the stars at night, and we're all responsible for that, no matter where you are. So let's talk to our kids, let's talk to our families, and begin to heal some of the divides and begin to get closer to one another. Because at the end of the day, in my belief system, all of our souls share this experience.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad, John, that you had the experience you had to make you a better person and push you forward. And I'm also happy to see you looking healthy and doing well so many years past the diagnosis. I just think that's such a blessing, and that you didn't just, stay in the rah-rah mood for, maybe a year or two after, but you've kept it going and you keep fighting and sending the same message. I just am really grateful to that. And I'm sure it's impacting more people than you know. So I will, with your permission, put your email in the comments for people to reach out to you if they really do want to get some help. But is there anything else you want to share? Anything, other important messages or anything at all?
I would just like to share with the audience. I think one of the major ways that you don't give up and that you become enthusiastic about this journey in life to be a part of change is to find your purpose. Purpose is what brings you to the God nature, as I speak about, in yourself, that makes you excited about doing these things, having this conversation, and sharing of yourself. And don't be scared about being vulnerable. Vulnerability is what makes people connect to you.
So, John, can you speak to that, not only as just a male, but an African American male, and talk about why vulnerability isn't something that men or people of color have to, or anyone, women too, and why they don't have to back away from it, and the power that actually comes from it?
Well, especially in African American culture, but I think in male culture as a whole, vulnerability makes you feel weak. It makes you feel something that men are not comfortable with, sharing of themselves because we're not comfortable. I don't want anyone to feel I'm weak because they'll take advantage of me, and or they'll think I'm soft. So we tend to stray away from that when we put on this hard exterior. Women have a better, in my opinion, way of being more vulnerable, naturally. I think we need to be vulnerable in areas that help people. I'm not saying that you should be weak at everything you do as a male, but vulnerable in things that help other people. That's what we're about. That's what we should be doing as human beings, as being a branch to this human experience of this tree. We should be helping each other. As the whole is good, we are good.
Mhm. And when you say, a lot of people describe vulnerability as weakness, but once you really went down that path, did it make you feel like a stronger person?
Absolutely. It gives you strength to open up to your vulnerabilities and be transparent. You become stronger, and your energy becomes so much more enlightened. We've known each other for years,
Yeah.
and we went to the same high school.
Yep.
But it wasn't until my light began to shine that you connected to me and I connected to you and said, wait a minute, there's something larger here, and let's talk about it. But that was all because I was transparent and vulnerable about my experience and honest.
100%, that's what it was. I was like, oh my gosh, his story, he's like hitting the heart of it, the vulnerability. Let me reach out to him, right? And I hear you also say, men, we don't want to feel soft or look soft, right? But
Right.
everything that you're talking about in terms of finding your purpose or finding meaning or helping others or doing for others all comes from a tender heart. When
Right.
we are living in the hard shell or the walls or the armor that we've got going to make us look tough or hard, we're not doing the work we're meant to do here.
Right.
So I hear it, I get it, it makes sense, but that's a conversation people need to start having too, right? Is that
And as I'll tell you this too. I can't forget this. I have two daughters, an older daughter, but at the stage that I had my older daughter, I was not in the right mind frame or in the enlightenment stage that I am now. Once I got my 5-year-old daughter now, she really opened me up and softened that heart for vulnerability and to learn how to be more transparent and honest dealing with a 5-year-old daughter. Kudos to being a lady in this society. I mean, females are the best. And being a girl's dad brings you to a different level. That love that she shares with me is deeper than the ocean. And it helps me understand why vulnerability and transparency and honesty is so worth it.
Yeah. And I'm so glad she has this version of you, John, because for any young girl or woman, our dads never want us to end up with a man that's hard. They don't want that for us. They want their baby girls to have a man that is soft and tender with them, right? So I'm so happy that your children have that now. So,
Yes, yes.
all right.
And that's the hard work that had to be done to repair it with my older children because they didn't get that version of me. And I was younger. And but they're learning that there are different aspects of life and different evolutionary periods of life. And so they're enjoying the person I'm evolving into.
I love that. Well, John, listen, keep doing what you're doing. Stay in a place of hope. Don't give up. And hopefully, some good comes from this, and people start reaching out more, and more people start hearing your story and can just change a little bit of them for being such a good role model for them. I really, truly thank you for joining me here.
I am honored and humbled by having this conversation and this interview with you. I appreciate you for this, and just to those who are out there listening, I hope you find your purpose. I hope you're blessed, and I hope that you have an experience that's worth being in this world, helping other people.
Thank you so much, John. Hopefully we'll have you back for the next chapter of some really great things you're continuing to do. So, all right,
Thank
you
you so
take
much.
care.
You too.